everyone. Welcome to Natural Grocer's Nutrition Education presentation. We are so pleased to introduce our guest presenter for the week, Lynn Vitale. Amber is a nutrition educator with Garden of Life. At Natural Grocers, one of our 5 founding principles is our dedication to providing nutrition education to the communities we serve, thereby empowering our customers and our employees to take charge of their lives and their health. Like all academic fields, nutrition science comprises a variety of viewpoints. Our speakers in classes reflect a variety of perspectives that do not necessarily reflect those of Natural Grocers. We encourage you to listen to different viewpoints, but most of all, listen to your body and decide what is best for you. The information presented at our events is for educational purposes only and is not intended to prevent, treat, mitigate, or diagnose any disease. Please remember that it should not be interpreted as medical or professional advice to replace that of your physician or healthcare professional.
Hello, I am Lynn Vitale. I am an educator with Garden of Life, and I'm here to talk to you about longevity, about your immune system health, your nervous system health, your endocrine system health, how all of these play a role together in giving you an optimized life with respect to your health and wellness. So we're going to talk today about how each of these are interconnected between your gut and your gut microbiome, the organisms that live within you, how they communicate with your brain and your nervous system, how your endocannabinoid is interrelated with that, and how all of that is sort of a master regulator over the immune system and the inflammation response, which are things that we're all very much worried about today. And so we start with just some basics. Where is the immune system? Is it in our bloodstream? Is it in our bone marrow? Is it in our thymus gland? Is it in different places at different times of our lives? But all in all, the majority of it is really in the gastrointestinal system. We've known for decades that at least 2/3 of your immune system is in the digestive system. It's in the gut. But what we didn't really know is that that also includes microorganisms that live there. It's not just our human cells, our intestinal cells, things that we know and name called like Peyer's patches, but it's things that we're only beginning to identify, other living organisms, mostly bacteria and fungi, that inhabit our gastrointestinal tract as well. And so also we need to understand the basics of the immune system. There's your innate immunity, which is sort of like an untrained dog that barks at every little leaf that drops and every little wind that blows. It's not as complex of a defense system, but it's very effective. This is what we use when we encounter something new, a new virus, a new bacterium, that we eat some bad food, that we, encounter an injury or a cut or scrape, something like that. But then our adaptive immunity is the trained dog. It's the one that is very much more specific and more complex. And it create memory cells and antibodies to things so that next time you can address it much more quickly and much more efficiently and not even know perhaps that you encountered it in the first place. And so these two immune responses, they both involve inflammation. And this is where we have to remember that inflammation is not a bad thing. If we didn't have inflammation, you wouldn't be sitting here listening to this today. You would be the bubble boy. If you remember that whole story, I think it was back in the 80s. David, the bubble boy, who had to live in an enclosure with filtered air and no one could come in and no one could touch him and no one could interact with him because his immune system was so deficient, he couldn't mount an inflammatory response. So inflammation is important, and we really have to remember that. We have it when we sneeze in response to pollen or even viruses, when we injure ourselves. It's a part of remodeling and healing a wound. So it's very important. We have to have it. And when it is healthfully balanced, when we inflame, we draw attention to an intruder and we resolve that, and that inflammation goes back down to normal levels, that is a healthy adaptive inflammation, a healthy canopy where all of these areas of the body are supported and all of these different systems are working in a balanced way. Our microbiome plays a huge supportive role in this, a root role. The endocannabinoid system, which we've had long before the cannabis plant was ever found. Even people who don't live where the cannabis plant ever grew still have an endocannabinoid system. That plant was just used to identify the receptors and the system and the functioning of it. So phytocannabinoids were used to identify a system in our body that then gained the name endocannabinoid system. But it is a master regulator over the nervous system, over the immune system, over the endocrine system. It even interacts in our musculoskeletal system and our digestive system. So it has a role to play in multiple areas and therefore is intertwined in this story of healthy inflammation, healthy immune response. When that adaptive response becomes maladaptive, that is when we get chronic inflammation. This is when things go wrong. This is when our energy goes into the tank, when we have, joint inflammation, our muscles are in pain and they never recover. Our immune system is going haywire. We can't think. We have neurological disorders, chronic or acute. We have mood and emotional disorders and depressions and anxieties, and we don't look well and we don't look healthy, and we may have topical inflammations and irritations, and these flare up over the long term because it never gets resolved. It's not brought back into balance via the microbiome, via the endocannabinoid system. They're not via our food, our diet, our nutrition. They're not bringing that back into balance and resolving inflammation once the intruder or the problem has been addressed. So that's a very important part of a healthy immune response. So now that we've talked a little bit about that, maybe you can answer this question: where does chronic inflammation begin? And chronic inflammation is the root of all of our common health problems today. Well, I think we've talked about it enough that you know that it begins in the gut. The gut being more than 2/3 of our immune system, the gut being where inflammation starts and then spreads to other parts of the body. We've known for thousands of years in Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine that all disease, all health begins in the digestive tract. And now, today, with modern methods, we are proving this at a cellular level, at a receptor-mediated level. We're looking at the compounds and things like cytokines and thromboxanes and prostaglandins and specialized pro-resolving mediators of that inflammation. And it's all coming together to paint this picture where we understand much more where it starts, what needs to happen to resolve it. But if we're not living a natural life, which most of us can't claim that, it doesn't resolve on its own. And we have to sort of hack into that with our understanding. So let's talk a little bit about the gut and brain connection. It turns out that of the nerve fibers that run between the gut and the brain, which all feed into the vagus nerve, which is like a super highway between the gut and the brain, that only 10% of those fibers are dedicated from the brain to the gut. So your mind is only telling your gut what to do 10% of the time. The other 90% of the fibers are going the other way. So they're headed from your gut and everything that's happening there. So if you eat food that is bad for you, if you eat food that is toxic to you, that you can't digest, that your body doesn't like, it is going to then send these 90% of messages back to the brain. And then that's going to create this vicious cycle. So that's my immune system reacting to a particle. There you go. Case in point. So we know that the gut is like a second brain, and that includes the connective tissue of the gut and also the actual organisms that live there. The vagus nerve is that superhighway. Dysbiosis is when the gut is out of balance, and that seems to play a role in every major cognitive disease that we're looking at today, in chronic degenerative diseases that we see in modern worlds, industrialized worlds today. So the canary in the coal mine is that we are experiencing symptoms outside of the gut that point to a problem in the gut. You may have heard of intestinal permeability. You may have heard of leaky gut. This is where inflammation starts at the gut level as a result of insults to the gut, imbalanced microbiome, non-diverse microbiome, foods that are toxic chemicals that you may be exposed to, medications. Stress alone will affect the endocannabinoid system and cause leakiness in the gut where things get into the bloodstream that are not supposed to be there. This is supposed to be a tight gate, tightly closed, tight junctions. They're called Things are not supposed to get through unless invited at very specific moments. Nutrients are supposed to get through, right? And that's it. Not all this other stuff. So things are getting through and it's flaring up outside of the body and settling into areas that are then allowing them to be diagnosed as certain kinds of diseases or conditions or symptoms or syndromes, for example, where they have a name and they have a code. So things that affect your immune system poorly and put you in a situation where you're much more susceptible to this. Changes in the light, that's happening right now. It's fall, so the light and dark cycles are changing. The angle of the light is changing. That, of course, affects how much vitamin D we make, how our pineal gland gets the light, how that affects our neurotransmitters. Some of us be exposed to colder temperatures. When your body temperature drops just a little bit, all of your immune processes don't function as well. We're exposed to more people. We have less fresh food. We're sitting around more. Maybe, with the changes in light and dark, we're not sleeping as well. Again, poor indoor air quality. And then we get into that time of year when we start to just eat terrible things. What can help us to combat that? Here are 6 things that are free. Getting out and exercising, whether it's low or high intensity. High intensity, you just have to watch to not overdo it. Like anything else that's good for you, you can also overdo it. But movement we're supposed to move. People think sloths don't move. They totally move. They move all the time. They do incredible things. It's just on a whole different timeline, so you don't really see it. We need to be moving as well. People need to move, and exercise is an intentional movement, and it raises brain-derived neurotrophic factor production, which affects remodeling in the brain, plasticity, making new neurons, repairing connections in the brain. It affects all kinds of neurotransmitters. It affects your endocannabinoid system. Sleeping, so important. Having a purpose, having a way to calm yourself through meditation, through prayer, through singing, through chanting, movement, breathing techniques, getting out in the sun. We've been taught to fear the sunshine and fear cancer from the sun, and yet we need the sun. So we have all of these people covering up, putting on sunscreen that are not making their own vitamin D, which is the very best way to get vitamin D is to make it yourself. If you have lighter skin, 10 to 15 minutes a day of exposing your skin can give you the D3 you need. If you have darker skin, it might take longer. That has definitely been demonstrated. And that is not enough to cause your body genetic harm. Fasting, controlling what you eat. Oh my gosh, that sounds like a diet. Humans have always fasted. Humans have always had restrictions in their eating patterns. They put them into cultural and religious norms, but they provided a certain health benefit as well. And simply having what we call metabolic flexibility, which is if you can't eat right now, are you still going to be a nice person? Are you still going to be able to think? Are you still going to be able to get your work done? That is metabolic flexibility. And that way you're able to only eat at times and foods that are beneficial for you. And that's really what can lead to good health. And then there are ways that we can supplement. We can supplement with polyphenols and polyphenol-rich foods and supplements. We can supplement with omega-3 fats. And we can supplement with people and with purpose and with community. And so these are ways that we can support the immune system. These all support the endocannabinoid system. These all support brain-derived neurotrophic factor production, which helps with brain. And they are all common to blue zones all over the world, places where people live into their 90s and 100s naturally with very little disease and very little ill health and very little limitation upon their activities and their actions. So I like to look at what has worked for eons, right? And so studying the legitimate and absolute birth and death records for Nicoya, Costa Rica, for Sardinia, Italy, Ikaria, Greece, Okinawa, Japan, and then a Seventh-day Adventist community in Loma Linda, California, which is just very community-oriented, very health food-oriented, and has done a very good job of keeping a more omega-3 and plant-based diet that supports an overall health. These all have those things in common, what we just looked at back here. And so how do we bring that into our lives? Well, okay, here's all the things we just talked about a moment ago that are good for your immune system, that are good for your endocannabinoid system. So no surprise that people who live in places where they're adhering to these standards naturally, culturally, because it's a part of daily life, they're finding that they have less inflammation, they have less chronic disease, they have longer life and a longer health span as well. I'm not just looking to live long, I'm looking to live well for a long time. So not just a long lifespan by artificial means, by medications, by, artificial, respirators and things like that, but to have a long health span, to be healthy up until that final moment when the body is just done. And so how do we support this? Through diet and lifestyle. So, obviously less calories, less chemicals, less sugar. Sugar and stress. Those are the big killers, right? So we want to have a way to interfere with those processes. We want to have more things that are good for us. I know caloric restriction of fasting sounds scary, but it's such an amazing tool to have in your toolbox to really reset your body and reset what your body needs. So, so, so important. Building a healthy microbiome comes back to the organic foods, the polyphenol-rich foods, the fruits and veggies full of fibers, full of prebiotics that support a healthy microbiome that will then do things for you. They'll make vitamins for you, they'll make neurotransmitters, they'll make fatty acids for you. But we could do all of this dietary stuff perfectly well, but if we don't manage lifestyle, it's all for naught, because stress alone will change your endocannabinoid system's response. You'll make compounds and pharmaceuticals in your own body that have an inflammatory effect. And you'll shunt everything into making inflammation because your body feels like you're at risk. You are in a fight, flight, or freeze state. And that is a stressed state, and the body upregulates the immune and inflammatory response in that moment. And so it doesn't matter what you eat. It doesn't matter what supplement you take. It doesn't matter what you do. You have to manage that stress. You have to get the right kind of sleep. You have to exercise. You have to get out in the sun. You have to build a community. You have to find like-minded people. You have to have a purpose to your life. So cleaning up your diet, it seems simple, right? But even those processed foods that we eat and that we have access to here in the United States are much worse than we find in other parts of the world, where people just know better. So I really don't like to eat macaroni and cheese, but if I did and I had to choose, I would definitely take the one with the shorter ingredients list of things that I can actually read and identify with, or where colors are naturally produced from things I can recognize, But really what we all need is real food. We need to eat foods that are rich in bright colors, which means that they're rich in antioxidants, rich in polyphenols, things that are red and blue and purple and yellow and orange and green, and that they bring all of these super stupendous health benefits to us. Things that we commonly come across: apples are very good for you, but not the ones that are coated in pesticides. Blueberries, aronia, chokecherry, your elderberries, your coffee, cacao, all kinds of nuts and seeds that are raw, not roasted, salted, and put in a tin can, but that have all of these health benefits naturally occurring. Olives, pomegranates, herbs all have polyphenols. They all have constituents that interact with your endocannabinoid system that help to retain balance in that system. What about getting less stress and getting more sleep? We cannot allow life to take control of us. We need to have tools. It could be an herb. It could be a medication. It could be a practice. It could be a technique. It could be a tool. It could be listening to music, listening to binaural beats, listening to certain people speak. You go through guided meditation or guided prayer. It could be that you exercise. It could be that you have your own meditation practice. Those are tools. We need to be able to rest at night like a baby, like a happy baby. If we cannot get into deep sleep, we cannot heal. We cannot rebalance. We will not reset our neurotransmitters. Therefore, we will not reset the nervous system. We won't reset our gut. We won't reset our immune system, the endocannabinoid system. Sleep is hugely important, and it's stress that interferes the most with most people's sleep. I can't think of anybody that would say, I'm really, really stressed out, but I sleep great. Not naturally, anyway. They might be taking a medication that puts them to sleep, but that's not the kind of sleep that is going to rejuvenate and repair you. Exercise is one of those things that can help you sleep better if you're doing it at the right time of day. There's tons of studies on what exercise does for you. Here again, you see that brain-derived neurotrophic factor, genes that improve longevity and improve immune system balance and management, decreasing the risk for all kinds of diseases, for all kinds of reasons. And when we have muscle mass, we have better metabolism. We don't accumulate fat where we shouldn't, and put our organs at risk. So many reasons. And then the opposite of exercising is just chilling out a minute. And it's just funny to me that we have to have a trend of doing nothing, that we need people to help us learn how to do nothing, that they have to guide us through that. They have to train us. And we need to go to a seminar and a whole weekend retreat on how to do nothing because we identify with accomplishing something. Multitasking, it's been proven, kills brain cells. Bad news for all of us, okay? So how do you repair those brain cells? You do things that raise your brain-derived neurotrophic factor. You do things that support your endocannabinoid system function that we've been talking about. And you spend a little time just staring at some leaves or a stump or the sky, or a pattern or your dog's playing, or, you just spend a moment in that rumination state. Chew your cud a little bit. And then connectedness to other people, connectedness to community. So important. You could forget everything else. You could have poor diet, live in a toxic environment, and have a strong community and a strong sense of purpose and live a long, healthy life. That's been shown. That's been demonstrated. We've all known people like that or heard of people like that. But having it all together, that certainly helps. Higher social integration equals lower risk of health problems at any age. We've been gone through a period of shelter in place where we have not been able to socially integrate. Some of us found greater social integration through these various virtual forums, but many people have found themselves more isolated than ever. And we are going to see huge health problems coming out of this, already happening. And we're going to see that more and more, the repercussions over the next few years of being socially isolated and feeling disconnected. Finding a sense of purpose overcomes everything else. It trumps everything else. This is hard to get to. You can't buy it in a bottle. You can't find it at a seminar. You can't find it on a weekend retreat. It's grace, it's visited upon you. Some people are born. They know exactly what their purpose is. Many of us don't find it until the very end of our lives. Many people don't ever find their sense of purpose, why they're here, why they belong, what they belong to, and what they meant to do in this life. So this is a gift if you can find it. We're challenged every day. What do you think these circles represent? They represent the size of a dinner plate. So a huge challenge, isn't it like a sign of elegance to have a set of really enormous, beautiful dinner plates, that you can decorate? And if you're doing hot cuisine, you just put like a little delicious, beautiful, artistic, piece of food in the middle of this enormous plate. But the thing is that if you have a buffet table, if you have Thanksgiving, Christmas, some kind of a holiday, and you're all eating together and you're piling your plate full of food, or you eat out at buffets or all you can eats, you're going to fill that plate and more. And this has been a problem. The disease of sitting as well. Our posture affects our body. It affects the nervous system. Talk to any chiropractor or osteopath. They'll tell you that if the spine is misaligned, all the nerves that run through that spinal column are going to be misaligned. They're going to be crimped and restricted, and you are going to suffer in all of your organ systems. That's a fact. Additionally, we're just sitting and we're not doing what we should be. We're exposed to toxins, things we cannot control and didn't even know about, like Roundup being sprayed on your grain crops since early 1980s and being in all of these products and all of your cereals, and things that we can control, like the food that we eat. But we're exposed to foods with zero education. Across this nation and other places around the world, we are exposing our children to foods that are known to be very palatable and rewarding and have no nutrition and are actually harmful to the health, and there's no education to them about that. And then they become addicted, and they don't know why, and they don't know how to get out of that cycle. So education is the only way to create a purpose and a willpower to overcome that addiction and overcome that inclination to follow the masses and eat these things. So when do we supplement? A supplement is something that completes something else, right? It's something you add to it, and it either enhances it or completes it in some way. And so generally we want to supplement in order to have more of the desired components of healthy food. We've gotten very far away from that in the supplemental world. They should support our health and well-being. They shouldn't, hijack our health and well-being. They shouldn't take it off in some direction that is unnatural for the body, and they shouldn't cause more harm than good. So we're finding through historical means, like looking at people who live in blue zones, for example, people who lived in Bulgaria and made this fermented milk that they all drank every day, and then through research that there are lots of compounds that we must have from our food and from real natural food that are so important, and we really cannot do without them. It's not just about calories. It's not about just carbs, fats, and proteins. It's about the nutrients and the way that those are composing the diet. Supplements should support or brace a healthy diet or a healthy lifestyle. This is an enormous tree. It's developed this huge canopy. If that's our canopy of health and our root system isn't strong enough to support that, the microbiome, the endocannabinoid system, our diet, our lifestyle isn't strong enough, then we need to brace it with supports, and supplements can be those supports. So I like this idea of the trifecta of health, the sort of equilateral triangle where every angle is the same, and every way you turn it, you have a supportive base. Triangles are known to be the most strong structure, the most supportive structure. And really, for me, I made the base of the microbiome and fermented foods and prebiotics and your endocannabinoid system. And then when we have proper omega-3 fatty acid balance, we can actually affect even these areas at the base. And so let's go into a little bit of what that looks like. I was speaking about the Bulgarians and about Ilya Mechnikov, and he was the first to discover and name Lactobacillus bulgaricus, found in cultured dairy. What he did is he went on a journey. He said, these people living in this area are living into their 80s and they're healthy, whereas these people living in other parts of Europe are living into their 40s and they're very unhealthy and they're dying very young. What is the difference? And he found that still having fermented foods in the diet, not spoiled rotten foods, but fermented foods and a diversity of foods, not just dairies, but fermented vegetables at times of year when you couldn't have them fresh, and you're getting all these other benefits from that fermentation. This lent to a very much better lifestyle, much healthier diet, healthier microbiome. When we have healthy bacteria and we feed them proper prebiotics, we make short-chain fatty acids. They make them, and they benefit our body. Butyric acid is the most important one because it also goes to the brain, and you only make it if you consume prebiotic foods. So resistant starches, things that are like in potatoes, things that are in root vegetables, yams and jicama and ginger, and even in asparagus and onions and leeks and things like that. We're getting soluble fibers, acacia fiber. These are all forms of prebiotics that support your microbiome in making B vitamins and making short-chain fatty acids and turning K1 into K2. Making all kinds of neurotransmitters, hormones, enzymes, and these play a huge role in our lifespan and in our health span. Vitamin D3, getting out in the sun, moving, these affect your endocannabinoid system, which then in turn affects your immune system, your nervous system, your endocrine system. And so sunshine is not just a means to make vitamin D, but it is the best means to make vitamin D. The next best means of accumulating vitamin D would to be eating something that already made it. And this is where you get things like cod liver oil, where the D3 that is in there is made into this active 25-hydroxy form because it's stored in the liver of that fish, and then you're eating it directly. It's just like your liver makes it. And so that's the next best thing. But most of us, even given a chance to catch fish fresh, would we eat that liver? We used to. Humans always did. We ate the reindeer liver or the elk liver, the caribou liver, of the animals. We don't do that so much anymore. So sunshine is our main way to make vitamin D naturally. We have limitations based upon the amount of melanin in our skin and other factors. Some people get out in the sun all summer and still don't make vitamin D because there are other things at play, other inflammations at play. So getting out in the sun also helps us with our brain function, with our pineal gland, with our melatonin production, our sleep and wake cycles, and that is extremely important and an extremely important contributor to our mood and our emotional health as well. But we can supplement vitamin D3, and that is great. And there are tons of studies on it, and it is probably one of the most important supplements out there, one of the most important areas to supplement. Now let's talk about fats in our diet. Let's talk about good fats versus bad fats. For me, it's very simple. If a food is not naturally oily, why would you eat an oil made of that food? So in other words, corn on the cob. Until you put butter on it, it's not fatty, right? Soybeans, edamame, you're eating, edamame in an Asian restaurant. It's not fatty. It's not oily, okay? Rapeseed, we don't even eat. That's canola oil. Cottonseed, we don't even eat cottonseed. So why would we make a fat of it? Margarine, you have to use a metal catalyst to make one of these fats into something that is more like butter. That's weird. Why would you have to do that? Why isn't it okay to take it from the natural form of the butter itself? So we've been fooled into thinking that these things are healthy for us simply because they're unsaturated or partially saturated, and that is not the point at all. We should be getting our fats from things that yield them easily. When you slice open an avocado, it's oily. Coconuts, oily. MCT derived from coconuts, oily. Grass-fed butter, fatty. Olives, fatty. Fish, fatty. Egg yolks, fatty. Very, very simple, easy to see. Nuts and seeds, fatty, easy to get the fats from there. And we're getting a balance of saturated fats, monounsaturated, polyunsaturated omega-3 and omega-6 fats. We're getting a whole balance of fats. You need both omega-6 and omega-3, and you can get them all right here under the good fat. You don't need to come over here to get omega-6 fats. You need omega-6 fats to ramp up your inflammatory response. They are your inflammatory compounds are derived from omega-6 fats, but you need a balance of omega-3 fats in order to put out those fires of inflammation. So it's like a controlled burn. Omega-6 fats are meant to start a controlled burn, to control the forest, manage the forest, burn up the undergrowth so that you don't have a wildfire from a lightning strike or a campfire, right? But if you do not have adequate omega-3 fats in your diet, that controlled burn never gets put out when it's supposed to because there's no fire department, and it winds up raging into a wildfire that nobody can put out, and it just burns everything in its path. So omega-6s instigate the inflammation. It's a huge part of your immune system. They're essential in your diet. Omega-3s resolve the inflammation ultimately. They put out the fire and turn things back to status quo. And so we really are only getting these resolution compounds, merisins, protectins, and resolvins from our EPA, DHA, and DPA. These are fully formed bioactive omega-3 fatty acids, not the ALA that we find in flax and chia. It has to be fully formed. So your liver will convert some of that into these forms before becoming these resolvins and protectins and merisins. And on the way, you're often making another class of endocannabinoids that can balance out your endocannabinoid system. And we're still learning so much about how that affects our nervous system, how that affects our immune system and our endocrine system functioning. We're trying to identify those compounds. Where do they come from? What do they do? Where do they go? But we definitely know that when you don't have enough omega-3 fats in your diet relative to your omega-6, you have rampant inflammation and typically chronic degenerative diseases. So this brings us back to this trifecta of health where supplements bridge, supplements brace. They help to support and get you from the poor health side of the bridge to the good health side of the bridge, where you can implement more dietary and lifestyle practices that are going to benefit you over the long term, over a good health span. There are 3 areas that I think are so important for everyone to supplement because we just don't get enough of them in our modern diet. Those are prebiotics and probiotics. Those are the omega-3 fats and other healthy fats. And so whether you supplement with an algal or a fish oil to get those preformed DHA, DPA, and DHA omega-3 fats, those are multiple ways to do it that fit your dietary decisions and your consciousness. And then vitamin D and exercise, which you can do at the same time. You can get exercise outside, walking outside, and make your own vitamin D, benefit your endocannabinoid system, benefit your immune system and nervous system, your sleep and wake cycles. These three areas are the most crucial areas for practically everyone to supplement. So if you walked in and said to me, Amber, I don't have a lot of money. I just need to know where to focus. What's the most important thing? Is it a multivitamin? Is it a protein powder? What is it? And I'm like, no, it's your probiotics and the prebiotics that feed them. Prebiotics can come with the food that you eat, or you can supplement it. Probiotics can come with fermented food, or you can supplement it. Your omega-3 fatty acids, your other fats need to be in that healthy side of the equation, and then supplementing a vitamin D3. Practically everyone needs to do it for one reason or another. It is that central factor that is common in pretty much all chronic degenerative diseases, and even some of the more acute ones, is low levels of vitamin D3. It's almost a given. And then other things that support overall health are polyphenols, antioxidants, and this idea of hormesis, which is finding that sweet spot of exercise, that sweet spot of fasting or eating within a certain window of, sleep even, or fun and play, or drinking wine. Like a little bit of wine is good for many people. Too much wine is obviously not good. So we have to find that sweet spot, which is called the hormetic effect, that as we are ramping up our intake of, let's just say, blueberries, we get to this point where it's beneficial. And after that point, it starts to decline again. It's exercise up to this point where you're a top athlete and you're balanced in your exercise and your recovery is great. But if you get to where you're training too hard and you're not recovering, the benefit starts to go downhill. If you're fasting and you're reaching this peak of benefit and now you're starving yourself, then the benefits go downhill, right? So that curve is what's called the hormetic effect. Polyphenols are a very simple way that we can supplement brightly colored antioxidants, your resveratrols and your CoQ10s and your grape seed extracts and concentrates and blueberry supplements and elderberries and chokecherry and all kinds of turmerics and green tea and all these antioxidants that can help you initiate this hormetic response and really support your microbiome and your endocannabinoid system and all of these other areas and make a huge difference in your overall health. So I hope that helps you to focus in and prioritize on, where to spend your money, what you can do with diet and lifestyle alone, the things that I call free, which a lot of them are out there, but supplements allow us to bridge that gap. They allow us to get some rest. They allow us to reduce our stress. They allow us to get more energy. They allow us to think more clearly. And these are all ways that we can maybe cook better for ourselves, shop better for ourselves, have the energy and the lack of pain to exercise and walk, and then form a community and have more purpose in our life and generate better neurotransmitters and have a healthier endocannabinoid system and generally feel better about our life. And that's a positive feedback loop. So all in all, the supplements are there to get us across the bridge or to support us so that we can actually implement more diet and lifestyle changes that are positive. And then, best case scenario, you don't even need to take supplements. You're eating a healthy diet, you're engaging in proper lifestyle management, and you're coasting with good health for the duration of your health span. I'm Lynn Vitale. I'm an educator with Garden of Life. Really appreciate you taking this time to listen to me and to my ideas about your health and wellness and your health span and longevity. I hope you found something here that was helpful. Thank you so much for your partnership with your stores. Please come in and ask the staff for help in finding some of these things and other good ideas to support you. You have great resources in the staff of your stores. Again, Lynn Vitale, Garden of Life. Thank you so much for listening. Hey there, this is Lynn Vitale, again, educator with Garden of Life. And let's go over a few questions that I figure you might have. Since I'm not there in person, I want to address the most commonly asked questions about this topic. One of the big ones I get is, what does it mean if I have an autoimmune disease? And how does that affect inflammation in my body? So that's a great example of adaptive immunity flaring up like those flames on that tree into maladaptive immunity, where inflammatory signals that have been escalated in the body are never really getting turned off or resolved. So that's typically what it means to have an autoimmune disease. And then those fires keep raging and your own forest is burning down, is the best metaphor I have. Another one, what is the difference between a prebiotic and a probiotic? So a probiotic is like the seed. It's the microscopic organism, a species or a strain. It will grow more of its own. The prebiotic is what feeds them. So prebiotics are things like resistant starches and soluble fibers that are the food for those probiotics. So I like to say that probiotics are like seeds in a garden. That's what it's going to grow. And the prebiotics are like the compost and the fertilizer, and they provide the nourishment for those seeds. Is omega-3 from plants and seeds a good option? It's a great option because omega-3 from flax and chia and this kind of thing gives you a whole host of benefits. It gives you certain kinds of fibers, other nutrients, micronutrients, minerals. Very important to have these things in your diet, but relying upon them as your omega-3 in the bioactive form, the EPA, DHA, and DPA do not exist in those plants. And therefore, your liver has to convert them. And that conversion is not so efficient. In the very best vegan, vegetarian, long-term, you might have 20% of the omega-3 from flax and chia converted to an EPA. And then it has to be further converted to DPA and DHA, and you lose efficiency with every conversion. So in a world where we get way too much omega-6 fats, it's good to have preformed EPA, DPA, DHA, which you can actually get in vegan form from algae. So that's a good option. How do I know if my omega-3 from fish is clean and safe? That's a huge question. A lot of people have, they're worried about mercury, PCBs, POCs like dioxins, other heavy metals, just ocean contamination, the overuse of the ocean, the sustainability of species. And I understand. You want to go with a company that tests, and you want to be able to have access to those tests. You want to go to a company that invests in sustainability ventures, that gives back, that is really concerned about maintaining the health of the ocean and is using well-known third-party certifiers for sustainability and for cleanliness and safety. And that's what we do at Garden of Life. How much vitamin D should I be taking? Well, I can't tell you that because I don't know you personally and I don't know your health history, but a vitamin D test is something you can very easily ask for. And even if you have to self-pay, it's not that expensive. I would highly recommend that you know what your levels are, and then a practitioner can recommend how much you should start supplementing. But you certainly know that if you work indoors and you don't get outside very much, and when you're outside, you're covered up with clothing or sunscreen, you can bet that you will be low in vitamin D3. So if you aren't doing those things, you do need a supplement. How much fat should I be eating? How much is too much? That's a great question, and it's really different for every person. Again, I can't answer it without looking at your health history, without looking at who you are constitutionally. As an Ayurvedic practitioner, I practice Ayurvedic medicine. It's different for different people and different constitutions as well. But if you get a stomach ache when you eat fat, you're either eating the wrong kind or too much at once. If it gives you changes in your bowel habits that last a long time, that are uncomfortable, or seem abnormal, then you're not digesting it well. Some people take some time to, get their body used to digesting fats. You can use digestive enzymes to help with that. If you have a gallbladder issue, you may not be able to eat as much fat at once. For me, I can eat a lot of fat at once. It really works well for me. For other people, even my husband can't eat as much at once, even though we're very similar in proportions and body weight. He just can't eat as much at once. It's a whole different digestive system and constitution. So as with everything like this, start low and go slowly. So start with a little bit of, you're replacing bad fats with healthy fats, then start increasing and see how you feel. If you're thinking better, if you have more energy, if your gut feels better, if you don't feel bloated, keep going. If you get to a point where you feel funny after you eat, slow down and listen to your body. How about those blue zones? The 5 blue zones, again, if you wanted to catch them, Nicoya, Costa Rica, Icaria, Greece, Sardinia, Italy, Okinawa, Japan, and then Loma Linda, California, which I always have to smile because it's just funny. It's a Seventh-day Adventist community that is well documented and well known to practice very healthy eating habits and lifestyle habits, and has very long lifespan and health span. So those are the 5 blue zones where people live into their 80s, 90s, 100s very healthfully with a long health span and low levels of chronic degenerative inflammatory disease. All right, what is a polyphenol? I thought you might want to know. Polyphenol is a class of antioxidants. And polyphenols themselves, as chemical compounds of foods, are very potent and very beneficial for our health, and our microbiome loves them. So in a sense, they're almost prebiotic as well, because they nourish the microbiome, and the microbes take signals from them and create substances that are beneficial for us. Plus, they help with your own mammalian cells and cell signaling and all that kind of a thing. So let's talk a little bit about time-restricted eating and fasting. I get people that say all the time, I thought that breakfast was the most important meal of the day, so why would I skip it to do time-restricted eating or intermittent fasting? And my answer to that is breakfast is the most important meal of the day, but like the word says, it's break fast. And break fast means breaking the fast. And it's not the when, it's the how. So the first thing you eat in the day should be light but nutritious. It shouldn't be overly enormous in mass. Your system is just coming back online. That might be at 6 in the morning for you. It might be at 2 in the afternoon for some people. And so it differs, and there are many ways to make that work for you. Is fasting for a full day or more actually safe? Well, it depends on your health conditions. So I definitely recommend that you contact a healthcare provider when you're intending to go onto a 24-hour, 48-hour or more fast, and give that a try. We didn't talk much about that in this webinar, but those are definitely ways to reset your health. They're highly recommended throughout history. They're things that people do all over the world safely, but I would want you to check with your healthcare provider to find out if that is appropriate to you. I also covered this at the end of the seminar. I only have a limited budget for supplements. What is the most important? Let me say it again. You've got to get your microbiome up and healthy. So prebiotics and probiotics, right? First and foremost, whether you supplement or buy fermented cultured food and fibers. And then D3. Practically nobody can get away with not taking a D3 supplement today in the modern world. And then omega-3 fatty acids. You have choices of getting your EPA, DHA, DPA supplementally from fish, from cod liver oil. You also have the ability to get it vegan from algae and algal oils. So those are ways to get those preformed omega-3s. And those 3 things, microbiome, vitamin D status, and omega-3 status, are areas where we all need extra help. So I hope those questions and answers help you out a little bit. Thank you again. Lynn Vitale, Garden of Life. Have a great and healthy day.
Thank you, Amber, for presenting that very informative presentation. And thank you to everyone for attending today. We are dedicated to providing nutrition education at Natural Grocers and into our communities. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and keep an eye on for more guest presenters in the upcoming weeks. Thank you and good night.